Oh, hell no. Hell no. Look who they got to referee Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz 2 in Saudi Arabia. Y'all won't believe this. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the Super Chat channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We working. Shout out to ESPN Plus. Appreciate you. It does help the channel when you use my link. Now, really, look at the referee. Let's jump right into the mix. You guys should smash the like button. If you're new and you like the content, hit the subscribe button. This is the referee for Andy Ruiz versus Joshua Part 2 in Saudi Arabia, coming up in about 8 days or so, a week, next Saturday. And they have selected Luis Pabon out of Puerto Rico, 53 years old, been active since 93, he's been refereeing. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of insight, I don't prefer this pick, and I'm going to explain in this video why. Luis Pabon, this is not a video against him per se, but I just feel like it's an unusual pick based on the fact of all of the big fights. You got to look at it. Floyd Money Mayweather, easy work, is the biggest star this generation has seen in boxing. If you look at Floyd fights, right, you won't find Luis Pabon as the referee. I feel like big fights in boxing, boxing history, have went through Vegas, maybe New York, stuff like that. And we've seen some big fights. Look, you see Robert Byrd for the Conor McGregor fight. And right here you see Kenny Bayless. And the list goes on. You look at the biggest fights that we've seen, biggest box office from Canelo Triple G. I don't recall, especially in recent memory, I don't recall any time there being a fight where Luis Pabon was the referee. And I'm talking about Canelo, Triple G, 1 or 2, just any big fight, like the biggest fights for that year. Let's look at it. Canelo, Golovkin. Let's see. I'm looking for some pictures, looking for some evidence. Okay, this is Liam Smith fight in Texas. He might have, I think he covered that in Texas. That was some years ago. I'm talking about big fights, blockbuster. Look, this is Canelo Triple G. That's not him. Things like that, right? Here's another Canelo fight. So I'm wondering, really, how did Luis Pabon get the assignment? Here's a look at Canelo, Kenny Bayless. There's usually certain guys that get it. So this is one of my concerns, is that Andy Ruiz, and I need all fans of new media and Ego's Army to pay close attention to this fight, because we got to clean up boxing, make sure everything's on the up and up. Here's a Golovkin fight, right? I don't recall Luis Pabon being brought in. So, and I definitely don't remember, we'll go through his recent fights. I don't remember him even doing any recent heavyweight fights, bigger guys and stuff like that. So as you guys see, Andy Ruiz, he is slated to go to Saudi Arabia. I just feel like it's a weird pick. A lot of people, let's get right down to it. A lot of people feel there could be a fix or any type of leverage, because this is Joshua's real big crossroad fight. He's going to have to win this fight. If it looks anything like New York, then that's going to be very detrimental to rematch room and to Anthony Joshua's career. So look at his recent fights and what fights he's covered. Jean Carlos Torres, Carlos Manuel Portillo, Nestor Bravo, Velasquez, some fights in Puerto Rico. He was the ref for Dimitri Bivol versus Castillo. And I got to look, I'm going to do my research to look at his bigger fights, because I remember, I think there was weird point deductions or something that was a knockdown. That particular fight with Bivol and Castillo, because it was a difficult fight that went to decision. It was recently on DAZN. It might have been on the Triple G card with Deryevchenko. I know I watched that fight, and I kind of remember not really feeling the referee. See, look at all these fights in Puerto Rico. You won't notice a lot of these guys' names unless you follow the sport that closely, like all, names, or, you're from Puerto Rico. Luis Saul. So his last other big fight from that was in August. He refereed in Russia, Sergey Kovalev versus Anthony Yarde. So I'm going to go study these fights again. If I'm going to try to make some time, excuse myself, to revisit some of these fights to see how his officiating was. Kovalev versus Yarde, I'm trying to think if there's any like monumental moments. You got to look at it. Anthony Yarde did have Kovalev badly hurt. I'm going to watch that round intensely. I think it was round 8. I'm going to watch that again to see if that should have been stopped. I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for history. This is a big fight, so I want to see the executive decisions. I'm going to rewatch round 8 since he did Kovalev Yarde. I know for a fact around that round, Yarde hurt Kovalev. So the corner didn't throw in the towel, and I'm going to see if I'm going to watch it again and determine if I think the fight should have been allowed to continue. Because truth be told, it looked like Kovalev was on his way out and the ref didn't even stop it. So I'm going to look for these things. I'm going to establish character and establish pattern, because my fear is Andy Ruiz being in Saudi Arabia, everything's set up against him already, the location, and I'll get to that in a second. It's a DAZN card, which he has nothing to do with DAZN outside of fighting Joshua late terms in the first fight in June 1st, and then being scheduled for the rematch clause. That's the only reason why he's fighting on DAZN, right? Because he's an Al Haymon PBC fighter. So I just hope it. I looked at the Caleb Smith fight. I really thought he lost to John Ryder. I looked at the Katie Taylor fight, and I really thought she lost to Delphine Pursunes. But these rematch room cards, the fighter, even Golovkin, he just recently signed with Eddie Hearn. I really had him losing to Sergey Derevyanchenko. So that's now it becomes a fear. I'm like, well, how did this referee, out of all the Tony Weeks, the Kenny Baylesses, Steve Willis, and, maybe even Jack Reese, even though I would hold off on that because he does have a couple controversial recent decisions in the KSI Logan Paul that had people kind of like debating. And then the Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight, people question if he had a slow count, if he should have even counted, etc. But I don't see how Luis Pabon, out of all people, got the assignment. Rob Brandt, Ryota Murata. So hopefully someone interviews Eddie Hearn, who's going to be in Saudi Arabia, to see how this was determined. But look at all these fights in Puerto Rico. Like, he's not being scheduled for any major fight except for a handful. Alida Alvarez versus Kovalev, the first fight. And these are because they're in Texas. So that's what I've seen. He sometimes gets the call when it's in Texas jurisdiction. And we know Texas has a long history of bad judging, bad scoring, and bad. Texas is a beautiful place, but historically, Paulie Malignaggi, he even said it after his fight with Juan Diaz. He was like, everybody knows I beat him, and he went off on basically the Texas commission and said he didn't get a fair shake. We know what happened with Julio Cesar Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. That fight was not a draw. And then all of his other fights, primarily, at least the bigger ones or the active ones, he's the referee in Puerto Rico. So once again, I'm wondering how he got this assignment. Now, he was in Saudi Arabia before, and that's another thing. So he's already worked with the Eddie Hearn card last year for George Groves and Caleb Smith. So I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is. I don't know how the refereeing is selected, but I do have concerns. I have a lot of concerns about. I just want Andy Ruiz, the American, to get a fair shake. And look at all these fights. He did Nayao Inui versus Jamie McDonnell. So this looks like a matchroom go-to guy. That's questionable. Jamie McDonnell is an Eddie Hearn fighter, and that fight was in Japan, I think it is. But that's an Eddie Hearn guy. So he has a history of working with DAZN fights, Kirill Relic and Regis Prograis, Kirill Relic and Bartholomew. That might have been a PBC one. So I'm just wondering how the judge, the refereeing is dictated. And he did Demetrius Andrade versus Jack Kukle. Like, you don't see the bigger and the biggest of the events, him being the ref there. So how did he get this big? This is supposed to be a colossal, big state-of-the-art new stadium, and that's who got picked. So I'm looking at this is stuff you have to take into consideration, because again, Joshua, everybody needs to pay attention to judging, the refereeing, and just the overall commission. We have to understand there's a reason why I feel like this, because Saudi Arabia is not a known location to even have combat fighting sports ongoing. Not occasionally wrestling or, some random Amir Khan fight, but I'm saying the biggest fights haven't been had in Saudi Arabia. This is like something that Eddie Hearn decided to do really against DAZN's wishes, because they preferred it in America, where the champion Ruiz wanted it. So I'm wondering how Saudi Arabia really even got the final selection. And I think I know. They know Joshua needs to win this fight, so they're trying to give him any type of advantage they can. So if they're willing to do that, Joshua on his own vlog on YouTube, which is on his YouTube personal page, he says, oh yeah, I should go back to the scene of the crime, meaning where it all went wrong for him in Madison Square Garden. He says he'll fight Andy Ruiz and let Andy Ruiz's tío, his uncle, be the referee. And he said he'll fight him in Tijuana. But then somehow we end up in Saudi Arabia. So I'm paying attention to everything. Joshua needs to win this fight. We have to see what improvements he made. And another reason why this is concerning is because if you watch Joshua versus Joseph Parker, that was a horrible job officiating. Joseph Parker was doing some really good work, and people forget this because he lost, but it was very competitive early. And every time that Joseph Parker tried to work on the inside, he was called for a break, and the referee was intervening. And we've seen this weird stuff where the referees kind of like partaking more in the action than they probably should. Even in the Triple G Deryevchenko fight, Deryevchenko hurt Triple G to the body, and he's like wobbled, and then the ref got in the middle and said break, and then like separated him. This has to be officiated the right way. It's a fair fight. If Joshua wins, he needs to win it on his own merit, not because of the influence. So I don't want to see a premature stoppage. I don't want to see bad scorecards. I don't want to see lousy refereeing, and a refereeing who's not allowing Andy Ruiz to work on the inside, not allowing Joshua to work out of the clinch, or whatever the situation. I just need to see it even on both sides. So everybody pay attention to this fight. All these things are impactful, and I really go watch it. Go watch Joseph Parker, and you'll see what I'm talking about. When he fought Anthony Joshua's home. That one was in the UK. And every time Joseph Parker was closing distance, doing his best work, somehow the fight got taken away. Andy Ruiz is going to look and want to get on the inside, being the shorter man against a 6'6" person. So he has to be allowed to work honestly and earnestly to try to accomplish that. And just to give you guys an idea what I'm talking about, why I feel like how I feel is because a trip to, look at this, the average trip, like nonstop, they have nonstop flights from London to Saudi Arabia, right? 5 hours, 6 hours. So that's basically Cali to New York, That's not that bad. Look, it says it takes 5.5 hours to get there. So that's like me traveling to New York. That's how long I'm on the flight. However, for people who are more so fans of Andy Ruiz, look at the time from Mexico City. The flight time from Mexico City to Saudi Arabia is 34 hours and 45 minutes. So it's going to be super hard and harder for Andy Ruiz fans. And this is why Rematch Room did this. Look at the total duration, 34 hours. It's going to take you over a day to get out there. With you have to do layovers and all types of stuff. It's going to take 34 hours to get that. Even if you're coming from Cali, right? If you're coming, Andy Ruiz is from Imperial in California. How long from Cali to Saudi Arabia? Watch. 16 hours and 43 minutes. So it still takes you almost a day versus the people from the UK. This is why, and I've seen pictures of Joshua before this fight was even announced, and he's in the UAE. He constantly goes to Dubai. Just watch his Snapchat and stuff like that. So it's all so convenient that the fight is happening in Saudi Arabia, and it's much more inconvenient for the champion who won the fight, won every round, for his fans from areas like California, Arizona, maybe Texas, Mexico. It's super inconvenient. It's more expensive because it's a longer distance being traveled. It's going to take 16 hours to 34, 35 hours, depending on what area that you reside in. So we know Joshua is going to have the home court advantage in terms of the fans because, again, they're trying to make Joshua as comfortable as possible. And it's a lot more on that side of the world. It's a lot quicker to get from London or the UK to Saudi Arabia than it is for people from California, people from Arizona, people from Mexico, where Ruiz has a strong fan base, and fan base of people like Texas. It's going to take them a lot longer, and it's going to cost a lot more bread to get there. So everything else, he's already at a disadvantage there. He's not going to have the hometown advantage, right? That's why they're putting in this obscure location where, you know, it's just different customs and cultures. And now they're using a referee who's not being sought upon and called upon for some of boxing's biggest fights in the last year or two. That's concerning to me. The judges, I'm going to look at them next. We got to pay attention to all this because this needs to be smooth. You don't see one Mayweather, one Canelo, one Errol Spence, Sean Porter level fight, Deontay Wilder. You don't see him officiating none of these fights. You know, just a couple Texas fights and some matchroom fights. Like I said, Jamie McDonald and Inoue, right? Which Inoue got the knockout. The WBSS, which Eddie Hearn helped promote. You know, I have questions about this, so I'm gonna look and research this. Non-Eddie Hearn related cards that he officiated would be like Kovalev Yard. So again, I want to establish character. This is how deep I get into boxing. He allowed Kovalev to be badly hurt in round 8 without waving it off. So if by chance Anthony Joshua is able to hurt Andy Ruiz, I don't want to see a premature stoppage like, oh, it's over and hurry up and rush it if it looks like he can recover. If it's like Wilder, what he did to Luis Ortiz or Brazil, okay, you got to stop that. But if it looks like he's not done for, or like the first fight where he got up and, you know, he was ready and he looked relatively clear-headed to have accepted that 2-piece, then he needs to let the fight go on. You know, we're just looking for fairness. And he did it for Kovalev. Yar was busting him up, and Kovalev was allowed to continue, and Kovalev did well for himself. Kovalev came back the very next round and won the next round, and then ultimately won the fight. So I hope Luis Pabon is doing an honest job, and the pressure is going to be on in this event. People are going to pay attention to it, but it needs to be fair. Let me know what you guys think of the referee pick. That's my thoughts. Those are my concerns, and I'm just looking for a good fight. May the best man win, but I want the best man to win in the honest fashion. If you love what I'm doing, smash the like button as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego. Signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.